Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
A lot of you have been asking me to talk about the 3 new farm laws which have been passed and which have caused some controversy. I will do that, but before I get started, my periodic reminder to you that I know you like our journalism. I know that more and more of you are reading and watching it. If that is the case, for us to be able to sustain it, you should pay for it. For good journalism to survive and prosper, good people have to pay for it. So this is my reminder again. We are not behind a paywall. We'll prefer not to go behind a paywall, but please subscribe on a voluntary basis. Why? Because you are good citizens, good viewers, good readers, and you have a stake in an open, free, democratic India and also free journalism. Because very often what you see on your TV screens, etc., if that embarrasses you, if you read what the Supreme Court has said about our TV channels, many of our TV channels, not all, and many other things, then you know that that India needs unhyphenated journalism. So please subscribe and contribute. People in India have a link for them. People overseas, I especially request you, because our ask from you is very small. It's less than the price of a McDonald's meal in a month or a pizza and a little bit of salad once a month. So all of you can afford to pay a little bit so that we can keep this going. Now, I am back to the point, which is the 3 new farm bills that Parliament passed and which has got some opposition angry, particularly in Punjab and Haryana, and which has got farmers or farmer groups agitating essentially in Punjab and Haryana, but maybe increasingly in some other states also, we don't know, but right now the epicenter is Punjab and Haryana. Now, before I get down to what these bills are and what these mean, let me read out 2 short passages. And I know that most farmers in India work not in English, but either in Hindi, a large number of them in Hindi, but also in their own languages, in whatever regions they are. So I don't know any other language. I will read to you these 2 short passages in Hindi because they are very important. And then I will tell you where they came from. You can guess where they came from, and I think you might get it right, but I will then tell you. So point number 1, हम कृषि उपज मंडी समितियों के अधिनियम में संशोधन करेंगे जिससे कि कृषि उपज के निर्यात और अंतर्राज्यीय व्यापार पर लगे सभी प्रतिबंध हट जाएं. In English, it means we will make amendments in Agriculture Price Marketing Committee Act in such a way that all restrictions on the trading of agricultural commodities across countries and across India's states are removed. Number 1. So number 2, हम बड़े गांव और छोटे कस्बों में पर्याप्त बुनियादी ढांचे के साथ में किसान बाज़ार की स्थापना करेंगे जहां किसान बिना किसी प्रतिबंध के अपनी उपज बेच सके. So number 2, that in large villages and small towns, we will set up new agricultural markets where farmers will be able to go and sell their produce without any restrictions. Who said that and where? Now, I deliberately took out one word from the first point because it started not with hum, it started with Congress. So these 2 passages I've taken out from the Congress Party's manifesto in 2019 election. If that is the fact, then what is the fight about? So part of my job as decluttering many of these issues is also to take out, also to question and to expose the, I'm sorry to use that expression, it's also agriculture, but to basically challenge bullshit. And my most persistent lecture over many decades in my newsroom to young journalists has always been this, that no matter what you do, never switch off your bullshit detector, because that is what people in power, irrespective of which party they are in, are always trying to throw at you, which is what we try to do in a dehyphenated manner. So Congress, having said this, is now opposing it, but that is the ideology of what is called as oppositionism. If BJP was in power, chances are the BJP also might have said the same thing. In fact, if you go back to the BJP in 2001, in a session in the first week of November of all places in Amritsar, where BJP had Akali Dal as its ally. The BJP itself had set up a committee on agricultural reforms. BJP had said pretty much the same thing, and I'll quote from that. In English, it said, all these restrictions should be removed, bringing the necessary amendment to the Essential Commodities Act. This is now Essential Commodities Act, which has also been amended, one of the 3 new laws. Essential Commodities Act 1955. If necessary, such laws have to be used only in emergency conditions. And would you like me to tell you who headed the BJP committee that gave this report? It was a gentleman, then a rising star of the BJP from Gujarat, Mr. Narendra Modi. So many of these things have cross-party agreements, but all parties say one thing when they are in power, the opposite when they are out of power. So what's happened now is that 3 new laws have passed. What are these? You will see these on my screen, but let me tell you also. These are Farmers Produce Trade and Commercial Promotion and Facilitation Act of 2020. And the second law is Farmers Empowerment and Protection Agreement on Price Assurance and Farmers and Farm Services Act. Long names, but I will declutter these for you. And third is basically an amendment to the 1955 Essential Commodities Act. Now, 1955 Essential Commodities Act, in fact, even I didn't know its pedigree. It actually came from the British times, like many of our laws and many of our good laws as well as bad laws. This law was passed, this was a particularly bad law because this was passed during the Second World War. So the British could regulate and control how much of which commodity will be stored by grocers in India, how much could be sold in India, how much could be kept in India. And we know the horrible consequences that have. Now the debate has reopened about whether Churchill actually sent grain away to his forces and others in Europe and elsewhere, but starved the people of Bengal. So millions died, and maybe this was as bad an atrocity as the Holocaust. Now that law India inherited and carried on with it. And the funny thing is, as I discover in an article that was written for us by our guru, that is Ila Patnaik, our guru in economics, she pointed out that this law was so draconian, it actually ran afoul of India's constitution. So among the early amendments India made to the constitution, one was to Article 19, because under Article 19, freedom of trade and commerce is guaranteed. And also to give itself the power to continue on with this bad law, Government of India also made an amendment to the constitution. It actually added a new entry to the concurrent list. It's called Entry 33, List 3, Schedule 7. Thank you, Professor Ila Patnaik. You are teacher for all of us. Now, so governments do all these permutations, combinations to give power to themselves. And these powers then became stronger and stronger and higher and higher. And if you remember the 60s, then just as there was a raid Raj with the industry, there was a license quota Raj with the industry, there was a license quota Raj then with agricultural produce also, and there was a raid Raj with agricultural produce also. A grocer was only allowed to keep this much sugar. So the grocer would be raided. Somebody would say, you were allowed to keep 100 kilos, you have 105 kilos, chalo mere saath mein jail chalo. So this led to Inspector Raj in agriculture from top down, that is from the consumer down to the farmer, and from bottom up, that is from farmer up to the consumer. So from fork to plate, and from plate to fork, and in between came the many middlemen. So that is why you got into this paradox where a farmer may sell potatoes at 2 rupees a kilo, but you and I living in a city will pay 40 rupees a kilo, and several people in the middle will make the rest. So the farmer will get very little value for his or her produce, and the consumer will pay too much. Why does that happen? That happens because the farmer has been a farmer, and the business of farming trade has been disintermediated from the market. The only area in India where markets don't work is farm produce. Markets even work when it comes to government services. There are fixed bribes for almost everything. Driving license, passport, anything. I'm not saying everybody is corrupt, but you can get anything done. You even now go for your driving license. Somebody outside will give you an eye test certificate without testing your eyes. So there is a market working everywhere in India, legally or illegally, but with agricultural produce. Why? That's because all of India got liberated politically in 1947. 1952 we got a elected government. 50 we got a great constitution. In 1991, Indian industry and business got liberated from license quota Raj because they had remained colonized until then, under license quota Raj. Now is the time that Indian farmer who still is colonized and colonized by the combined power of the politician, of the bureaucrat, of the trader, of the middleman, and frankly of the consumer. And I'll tell you how this works. Every time onion prices go up, all of us start our Vilap and Rona Dhona and breast beating. When that happens, all TV channels, onion goes to 100 rupees. Sushma Swaraj ke aankhon se आंसू आता है, right? Sushma Swaraj was then Chief Minister of Delhi and fighting an election. या सोनिया गांधी की आंखों से आंसू आता है, या नरेंद्र मोदी की आंखों से आंसू आता है. All the Rona Dhona in this country is then driven by TV channels, whose main constituency is the urban middle class, which is consuming. So consumers then also have colonizing power over the farmers. You want to see a good example of that or a bad example of that? Unfortunately, that's precisely what's happened today, which is that Government of India has banned the export of onions because prices are going up. This is so draconian that even exports in transit are being reversed. So Bangladesh is angry, Sri Lanka is angry. I mean, to identify India's soft power with onions is ironical, but India committed these supplies. This also ruins India's reputation as a reliable export supplier. In no market does a supplier do that. Countries who focus on exports sometimes even indulge in a little bit of self-denial to do so. But now, Bihar elections are coming up, then West Bengal elections are coming up, there are by-elections coming up in Madhya Pradesh. So, consumers can't be angry and TV channels can't be angry. In the process, who's the one that I can squeeze? It is the wretched farmer that I will speak. In this case, I will squeeze. In this case, most of these farmers are in Maharashtra, etc., which are not going through elections. In any case, those states are under other parties. They can go to hell. So this is how the farmer is squeezed. And really, Congress should have objected to these changes, but it should have objected after reading what it had committed and promised in its own manifesto, because in its own manifesto, in the first clause that I quoted to you, the Congress said they will remove all these restrictions on interstate, which the BJP government has now done, or NDA government has now done, but also all restrictions on international trade. So they should be standing up now in Parliament and saying, why are you not allowing onions to be exported? Will they do so? Chances are no, because they are also worried about the same consumer. So that hypocrisy continues in Indian politics when it comes to agriculture and agricultural produce. And parties and try and weigh farmer versus the consumer. And they think consumer is more articulate, consumer is smarter, consumer is more visible on TV channels. Poor farmer. In every state, farmers have different issues, and they're farmers and farmers and farmers and farmers. And you can throw other stuff at them, तो उसका आप बेवकूफ़ बना सकते हैं. तो एग्जैक्टली वही हो रहा है. इंडियन फार्मर हैज़ बीन सोल्ड, आई एम यूजिंग दिस एक्सप्रेशन, आई थिंक फॉर द फर्स्ट टाइम इन कटक क्लटर, बट फॉर द थर्ड टाइम, इंडियन फार्मर इज बीइंग सर्व्ड bullshit in the name of farm protection. Indian farmer does not need to be wet nursed. Indian farmer is very confident. Indian farmers' productivity levels are good. They can become enormously better. But Indian farmer needs to be married with the market. Indian farmers' disintermediation with the market has to be reversed, which is what these three laws are trying to do. So the first law is actually not a new law, that's an amendment. That is the amendment to Essential Commodities Act. I find that even most of the opposition parties, the left is different. The left has different issues in life. Fortunately, they don't matter. I mean, there are hardly enough left MPs in Lok Sabha now to even break Section 144 near Parliament. So the left will make noise and they will keep making noise. You can discount that. But the first law, which is an amendment, is generally not so controversial. That's an amendment to the Essential Commodities Act, which is a change in the Section 3 of the ECA, whereby it reduces the powers that states in the center had to enforce stock limits, price limits, etc. on any commodity. It also limits the commodities where it's done. So these can only now be imposed in case of an emergency, a war, a famine, or a sudden price rise. And there some price rise limits have been fixed. For example, it's 100% for vegetables. If the price goes up by 100%, you can put stock limits. Or lentils and cereals, that is dal, chawal, gehu, roti, you can put at 50%. Once again, people like Ila would think that these restrictions or are unnecessary, that it's a loophole, but good is not the enemy of the best. So this is not just good, this is very good, and I think this is the least controversial of all the changes. Now the fact also is that even with this, governments have been playing with agricultural markets. And once again, I quote from Ila, between 2014, West Bengal government using ECA actually ordered its traders and shopkeepers to sell potatoes below market price. कौन बेचेगा below market price? Obviously, कुछ cash मिलेगा, कुछ black मिलेगा, whatever, or stuff will disappear. Only a government in West Bengal, of the left or of Mamta, can decide to order people to sell at below market price. Number two, between 2014 and 19, rules on onion exports were changed 17 times. Think of yourself as a farmer in Nashik who grows this wonderful red onion. What happens to you if you don't know that between you planting the seed and transplanting and then pulling out your onions and drying them and storing them, and to the time when peak prices come, which is October, November, around Diwali time, export rules would have changed many times. So in 5 years, 17 times onion export rules were changed. On rice, in the same period, rules were changed 14 times, 1-4. So how do the other two laws work? So farmers produce Trade and Commerce Promotion and Facilitation Act, which essentially addresses the marketing issue. Now what happens with marketing issue is that a new law has been passed now, this law, which says that agricultural produce marketing committees will now lose their monopoly. They will not be shut down. They will lose their monopoly, which is a monopoly of business as well as monopoly of geography. And really, it's a tyranny. How does it work? Let me just briefly try and tell you. So if you grow fruits, vegetables, wheat, rice, anything in a particular district under which comes under a particular agricultural marketing committee, you may be living on the edge of the district, which makes you much closer to the adjoining district, but you cannot take your produce even to the adjoining district. You have to take it back to where your own legal mandi is. You cannot take it to another state. Forget about exporting. So you can only go to one mandi. That one mandi knows that all these farmers can only come to me. That one mandi knows, and every trader in that mandi knows, that what each farmer in that area is growing. So if a market knows that these guys have to come and only sell to me, what is it called? It's called a monopoly. So mandis will not go away, mandis will remain, but the power of the mandi will remain to the area of the mandi, not all of the district, but the market. So when you go to the mandi, you might pay tax there, but not once you are outside the precincts of that marketplace, of that hart, yard, whatever you call it. Okay, so this you put in where I talk about Mandis, APMC Act. So that Mandi becomes a monopoly customer. There what happens, agricultural produce is perishable. So the farmer lands up in the evening with a tractor trolley or a belgadi loaded with, say, cauliflower and says, look, I've got all this gobi. Now, do you really think that the farmer has a chance of getting a competitive price for his produce? So somebody will say, I'll give you this much. And these traders will then cartelize and they'll set up a price. So it will not move beyond that band. Now, what choice does the farmer has? The farmer can't go back. You can't take agricultural produce back, because then agricultural produce, if anything, is even more perishable than news. So what the new law now does is, it doesn't say that these mandis will go away. It says the mandis will be there, but the farmer is free to take his or her produce anywhere, to an adjoining district, to another state, which means the interstate movement of agricultural produce will also be freed. We are a funny country. All of Europe is united. We are part of WTO. We are promoting the idea of globalization of trade, of open trade, but we don't let our states, our districts to trade with each other, only when they are farmers. So this is again a case where farmer is being liberated. This has also caused the greatest controversy. And what is the controversy? One controversy is fake, which is FAKE, all capitals, which is that with this, government's minimum support price will stop. That is nonsense. Nobody is stopping MSP. What this will stop is the monopoly of Food Corporation of India. So many farmer activists, including people that I take very seriously, like Ajay Veer Jakhar in Punjab, although we might have some disagreements, they say that MSP, instead of being the minimum support price, has now become the maximum sale price. Because since only the FCI can come and buy your stuff through the same middleman in the mandi, the FCI says, this is my minimum price, this is also the market's maximum price. Now, if suppose somebody gives that farmer a higher price elsewhere, today that farmer cannot sell their produce outside of the mandi. You are caught in the mandi. So that goes away, but at the same time, MSP does not go away. What happens is MSP is restored to being what it was, which is minimum support price, not maximum selling price. This is good for the farmer. The second reason why protest is coming on this, and so vehemently, and you can understand that, is that states like Punjab and Haryana, and that will also explain to you why they are so angry. States like Punjab and Haryana, they thrive on producing wheat and rice surplus. That is then acquired by the FCI or procured by the FCI every year for the national buffer stocks. When that happens, both states have put heavy taxes on their mandi operations. It used to be up to 14%. Professor Ashok Gulati of ICRIER tells me, and he spent his lifetime looking at agricultural markets, writing a book about it now. Now, after GST, it's 8.5%. So when FCI buys a ton of wheat in Punjab, it pays 8.5% value of that as mandi tax, of which 2.5 percentage points goes to the mandi and the mandi committee, so it's distributed amongst everybody there. 6% goes to the state government. So a state like Punjab makes maybe 5,000 crores every year from this mandi tax from the FCI for the wheat and rice itself for the national kitty, or it produces for the national kitty. Now that is the money that these state governments then use, and they'll admit to you when you talk to them off the record or on the sidelines, they will tell you that that is the money they then use to give free electricity to farmers. So say vote bhi kharid liya, grain ka daam bhi बढ़ा दिया, Food Corporation of India ka bhi diwala nikal diya. At the same time, farmer gets nothing extra. So look at this situation in Indian agriculture, that FCI buys, say wheat, I'm just using a notional number, wheat say at 20 rupees a kilo. At 20 rupees a kilo, on top of that 8.5% of this tax. Then that wheat has to be stored, then it will be sold under right to food at 1 rupee a kilo. handling cost, wastage, everything. This is what in one of our earlier episodes we had called broken window economics. Now, if the same wheat and rice was being bought by private traders, maybe at a higher price, and if the farmer saved that arbitrage of mandi taxes, or that arbitrage got divided between the farmer and the buyer, and it went straight to the flour mill or straight to the rice mill, chances are that your supply chains will work better, and also the consumer will pay less. And that will apply even more to vegetables and fruits, where cold chains and storage is required. Because today, given Essential Commodities Act restrictions, nobody wants to set up a cold chain or a cold storage, because I may store up so many tons of onions and government then declares stock limits. So what choice do I have? I have to bring it out and throw it on the highway. Otherwise, I'll go to jail. So those things go away. So that is what needs to be understood. But I can also understand why Punjab and Haryana governments are angry, because this is a big source of revenue for them, which they suspect will go away. Maybe in negotiations something can be done. The other objection, I do understand that this has been done using a crisis of COVID, and states have not been consulted. Also, there are constitutional limitations. Is this constitutionally allowed? That is something I'm sure that will be challenged in the Supreme Court in the course of time. But remember, this is India. Unfortunately, reform only takes place when there is a compulsion. 1991 reform would not have happened if all of India, we were in our working lives then. It was very humiliating to see your gold being flown out of India to Switzerland to be mortgaged, whereby you could get the foreign exchange to avoid a balance of payments crisis. And that's when all of India said, no, what we've been doing is wrong. We have to reform this. And that's why Narasimha Rao, even with a minority government, he and Manmohan Singh was able to reform the economy and end the license quota raj for the farmer. That is what Modi government's now trying to do. Manmohan Singh and Narasimha Rao ended the license quota raj for Indian industry. This is what the Modi government is now trying to do for the Indian farmer, using the COVID crisis, because never waste a good crisis. We never tire of saying that, but when that happens, we should know what is a good thing and what is a bad thing. So the third law that has changed, that we mentioned to you about, that is the Farmers Empowerment and Protection Agreement Act on Price Assurance and Farm Services Act. That is very simple. What that does is that today, if I am planting onions and I don't know what the price will be, then I want to know how much do I plant, who will take it. Now, if somebody comes to me and says, look, I have a cold storage in September, October, November of this year, I will buy all your onion produce if you produce up to this much onion, and I will buy at this price. So the farmer then knows how much onion to plant, how much to invest by way of fertilizers, by way of all the stuff that goes on in looking after a vegetable crop. Vegetable crops are high maintenance crops, and then the farmer is assured of his price and also assured of the fact that somebody will come and take it. So it's not as if there'll be a glut in the market and I will not know where to go. But for that, you will also need, the trader will need the assurance that government will not arbitrarily ban exports, because somebody may be buying for exports. So that is the next reform that has to come, and that's where Modi government has failed itself. Otherwise, contract farming like this, where McDonald's wants tomatoes of a certain size because only that slice goes into the sandwich. Some restaurant chain may want organic moong ki dal or urad ki dal or maa ki dal or rajma. Farmers can produce that and restaurants can buy that directly from the farmer. Today you have a situation where the farmer produces it, goes to the mandi, middleman is there, middleman buys, you pay mandi tax. It's a bit like, I'm quoting Ella again, it's a bit like you cook your own food at home, but every time you cook your own food at home, you also have to pay a fee to the neighborhood restaurant or dhaba for being able to cook your food at home. That is colonialism. That is Lagan of the worst colonial times. So those are the things which are now being done. So this will do two things, and this is how it will be win-win. One, it will free the farmers from this vicious cycle of buyers and traders and end users. 2, it will help them lock in the price before the harvest. And 3, it will take away intermediaries and reduce the gap between farm and fork. That is the price of that 1 rupee or 2 rupees per kilo of potato that the farmer gets, and 40 rupees that you and I pay. So there is data, and there's various data, but generally you would see that in the most advanced countries, the Nordic countries, the gap between farm and fork is not even 10%. In less advanced countries, say like Indonesia, it's about 20%. In India, it can be anything between 65 to 95%. That is an outrage. And the only thing that happens is that between the farmer and the consumer, one thing that's missing is the market from the farmer's half of the bargain. The consumers and traders half of the bargain, the market is there. But between the farmer and the consumer, his half of the market is controlled. That is now being freed. So on balance, this is not perfect. More needs to be done. But this is a big reform, and I agree with Ashok Gulati that this is almost comparable with what was done to industry in India in 1991.